Why, hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Magical Girl Month. Today, we're going to be talking about some pretty interesting things, actually. We're going to be talking about Madoka Magica, and I really wanted to do this one first out of all of them in Magical Girl Month, because the next one after this is going to be Magical Girl as a genre, and likely going to touch upon a lot of stuff. Then after that, we're likely going to have Fake Khaled Liner, just because I want to go touch upon it. Even though I've already lightly touched upon it, we'll touch upon it in more detail, and certain other characters with it. And finally, we'll have a two-parter about Magical Girl Lyrical Nanoha. Why? Because there's two kind of major continuities, and I'd like to touch upon both of them. But I would also like to touch upon the other ones as well, so I'll throw those in the additional continuity video that's coming right after. So, Madoka Magica. We'll start off with the basics. It was founded about 2011, and it was actually a pretty interesting show to come out of time. It was the first show that a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people noticed that Magical Girls could not be just for little girls and stuff like that, and you could actually write smart or some form of story to relate to them. Personally, I prefer Yuki Yuna because it usually does it in a better way while keeping with certain other trends and being a little bit nicer to watch. Madoka Magica takes it to the extreme. It's very similar to Monogatari, if I said that right. That series, which I've also watched. It's pretty good, actually. But it comes from the same kind of people because it makes sense. Because it's a show that twists things, it does things differently, it plays with music, it plays with other things to try and twist reality. Now, Madoka Magica, I'm going to bring one rule thing, is that I have a small distaste for it after these many years. It's been about 8 years, since the actual foundation of Madoka Magica came out, which first is actually really impressive. It's also impressive that it's been around for so long. There's huge amounts of spin-offs, manga. There's a video game that's still very popular in Japan. And they even have a crossover with Nanoha, amusingly enough. Everything has a crossover with Nanoha. Even Fate does, which is actually, to be fair, those comics are amusing. Nevertheless, it was something different. Something to show that Magical Girls didn't have to be so happy and stuff like that. However, if you watch Nanoha, you would have already known that Magical Girls aren't always happy. Nanoha had... The original series is already pushy, but the second season and onward can be dark enough where it proves it's not just a children's show, even though it wasn't a children's show to begin with, but it wasn't really meant to be a children's show. It pulls darker themes into it because this is what it means, but it doesn't stay there. That's probably my biggest problem with Madoka Magica. It just stays in the darker themes and just kind of just goes, okay, the darker themes, okay, that's totally our stuff now. If you go into watching Madoka Magica and you haven't done anything, like you haven't watched this podcast or anything like this, you could be surprised at about episode 3 about how dark it gets. But in my case, I wasn't really surprised because I kind of saw it coming. I expected the issues to traverse, especially since the way that the show portraying it. I was not expecting how dark it stayed, but I was expecting it to get dark, briefly especially. Now, Madoka Magica is meant to show that, oh, this is gritty, it's nasty, the realities of life. The one thing is, though, is that it's not done to enough of a degree where a lot of people will understand it, which is the problem. With a lot of shows, actually, not just Madoka Magica. A lot of shows that try to push the idea of mental issues or other things like this, do it out of the aspect that they are wrong. And throughout the majority of Madoka Magica, that's exactly how they picture it, that they are wrong. While in certain cases, there's actually some cases where it's like, oh wait, no, they're not wrong. Now, multiple characters, especially Homura, are proven to be wrong. It's very straightforward, very makes sense. But that's only because of what they do. And since technically, from a sheer standoff point, she is technically the antagonist of the series. But she's also the protagonist, and that's the other issue that I have with it. Madoka Magica tries to push character development, but none of the characters get developed. Madoka is literally the exact same person through the entire franchise, and she's the main character. That's a small problem. Mami, who shows up for a grand total of 4 episodes and the movie, is literally has more. Like, I care more about them than Madoka. I care only a slight bit more about Sayaka than Madoka, because she also doesn't have that much character development. It's the same issue I have with Ava, actually, but Ava at least has 52 episodes and actually decides to flesh out the characters about episode 33. With Madoka Magica, they have 12 episodes. It means you can't be sitting around. Anytime a character is sitting down, it should not be exposition all the time. Which, most of the time, it is, and it pisses me off. The only scene where people are talking and it's not exposition is my favorite scene in the entire series, and it's just Homura and Madoka talking on the way home from school. That is literally the best part of the series. Okay, maybe some of the fight scenes, but we'll get to those later. So we have this dark story, characters that aren't completely fleshed out, and supporting cast that somehow has more character development than the actual main characters. Okay, that's actually quite a bit of anime. We could probably list a lot of anime that does that. Hell, Yuki Yuna does that. But why do I like it? Because it's very clear that Yuna has already had her character arc and she doesn't need one. Just like Mami, technically, in this show. She already had her character arc. It was off screen, but she already had it. She didn't need another one. It was simple and straightforward. And technically, she was in another one, which was lovely. It's what I like to see, especially in these kinds of shows. When a show gets dark, you need to understand that characters are kind of your big thing. They make or break. So, I haven't really touched the big red horse in the room, because the big red horse in the room, which isn't really a horse or anything, is... I really can't say it, can I? Oh, well... is some of the supporting cast, more specifically Shizuki. If you don't know, it's Hitomi Suzuki. She's probably the most interesting character in the show, and they only show up in the movie, like the actual movie that's additional, for only a little bit, and they're still very interesting. I wish some of the cast were way more, well, likable. The rest of it's not too bad. Sayaka is okay. Kyoko is okay. Mami is probably the best character simply because she actually has kind of character development. Kyubey, I should touch upon them, but I'll touch upon them later. The basic plot, which I haven't touched upon, is very simple and straightforward. It takes from other magical girl stories of collection, which, if memory serves, the first one to actually use that as a serious plot point was Cardcaptor Sakura, but then it kind of like became a magical girl staple. Probably was even before that, but that's the one I remember anyway. And just kind of became a staple. Nanoha did it. Hell, Fake Khaled Liner does it. Can I list another? No, Yuki Yuna doesn't do it. I could probably list another one. I probably just have to go look. With Madoka Magica, it's really hard to say that they're bad by any means by doing this. It sets up a nice story, and the collection arc is usually fairly interesting because it allows you to branching off episodes. Oh, wait, no, this is a serialized show. You have to watch every episode in sequence. Which means it's not actually a collection story now, is it? Most of the time, collection stories are non-serialized, which basically means that you can take, or episodic. I usually use the term non-serialized now because apparently episodic shows are something you don't want to touch. So, basically, each episode is self-contained, which is, for magical girl stories, probably better. Probably what Madoka Magica should have been. Basically, take little stories that revolve around the central character that are a little bit grim, that are a little bit pushy, but have different things for each episode, and maybe connect them near the end. Maybe. That's a maybe. No definite. But since it's a serialized show, it's every episode matters. Which tries to build this giant tension at the end of all of the reveals you're getting, all this. But they need to learn to stop shoving lore in your face. Lore can only work in some ways. And in Madoka Magica's case, it kind of hurts. Now, the movie does a good job of using lore to its advantage. I will blatantly say that the movie is actually pretty decent. It's not great by any means, but in comparison to the complete show, it's probably better. Oh man, I feel so good getting off my chest. Now, the big driver of this is Kyubey. Basically the equivalent of an emotionless little cat that pushes everyone forward in the story. That's literally their job. They are what is known as an incubator, which will basically push people towards future so they can get energy and leave. That's it. That's literally their whole motion. They are sheer logical driven, and I love every moment they're on screen. They're probably the best part of the series, especially in actually the dub, because their voice actor is amazing. But even in the sub, their voice actor is really good too. So it really doesn't matter. Either one's good. But whenever they're on the screen, they hog the spotlight, which is good and bad. It's great because you got this person who's not moving their lips, and they're basically the equivalent of not exposéing, but just explaining why your thoughts are not logical, and it's amazing. While with when they're explaining all the time, because they're always pushing exposition, lore, exposition. That's their whole point. Probably, if Madoka Magica actually ran for 24 episodes rather than 12, it would probably be a little bit less annoying. And they'd probably be able to spread some things out and actually make it a little bit better. The 12 episodes, or is it 13? No, 12. 12 episodes are a hindrance. This should stop. Having too little episodes does get a little bit annoying. I understand that, yeah, animation is hard, but you know what's harder than what in a way is easier than animation? Writing a decent story. Like, it doesn't have to be great, just be decent, and then throw animation on top of it. Boom, there you go. Good story, good stuff. Probably the best example of this I can think of in common mind is My Hero Academia. Why? Because it's a good story, and the animation comes second. It's very clear that the animation comes second. The animation's good. It's not great. Look at plenty of shows that are look great. A great example is God Eater. The God Eater anime looks gorgeous. It's amazingly pretty, but man, is it shit. So, what they probably should have also done is probably try to avoid the crazy imagery, because yeah, sure, it's a visual medium, but really, you didn't have to do that. It just makes it annoying sometimes. Now I've gone on a tangent about animation. As you can tell, I prefer Kyubey and other forms of information gathering in this story rather than the main characters, which is a problem. Now, finally, I can get to some of the other things about this show. It has a set of movies, and it's the original show. The set of movies, amusing enough, the first two movies are recap. They're about the same length as watching 10 episodes. So, about a little bit more than 4 hours. So, that's not bad. Actually, no, that's pretty close to 12 episodes, amusing enough. I thought it was closer to 10. Brain fried. Nevertheless, that's kind of the whole point. Most of these issues come from other things, and I don't really know how to keep pushing it, but that's kind of the idea. It's probably a mixing of almost incompatible information. You try to make a dark magical girl show, but you don't put in the effort to truly make it interesting. That's just what they did. I can't really watch Madoka Magica anymore. Especially even after watching it with my friend. It's just boring. I'll be talking about Yuki Yuna in probably length in the next, where I explain magical girl shows and why it's my favorite magical girl show. Even over Nanoha, which I watched the entire series, I've read it all, and I know certain parts of it are shit. I'll be talking about it, and I'll be talking about how it surpasses Madoka Magica in many cases. But the one thing it doesn't do over Madoka Magica is the music. The music is written by one of the best people who you could possibly get for music, and it's Yuki Kajura. Now, I'm going to put a blatant thing on it. One, I love their music. The one problem with Yuki Kajura, though, that I want to get off my chest, is that they're very, very good at setting a tone. Basically, when someone says, it needs to be a dark, okay, she can make it creepy, even with nice, pretty tones. Why? Because it's fucking terrifying when she makes stuff. One of her first works, which was in 2004, was My Hime. Now, My Hime is not the best show by any means, and its sequel, My Otome, is technically a magical girl show. I'll be touching upon that as well. But she wrote the music for both of those. And some of the music tracks she came up with are ridiculously crazy and terrifying in certain cases. Not to mention, the ending theme is done by Calafina. Calafina is also similar to Yuki Kaijura in the aspect that whenever they're recruited, it's usually for a good reason. They're great, their music is great, and it usually serves a purpose. Now, their music is often really fucking creepy. Or, it's very sad. They basically pick one. In this case, they pick fucking creepy. Most of the music is probably the best part of the show. If you want music with a kind of okay show, Madoka Magica is exactly what you want. Now I need to touch on the movie, because the movie is the red herring in the room. Why? Because there is 3 movies, and apparently supposedly going to be a 4th, but no guarantee about that one. The first 2 movies are just recap, but they add some extra details and obviously increase the animation budget, so you don't have to worry about it. And the surreal imagery makes more sense in a movie because you have the animation budget to pull it off. While with everything else, not so much. The third movie, on the other hand, which is Madoka Magica Rebellion. It's an interesting thing that's mostly filled with things for fan service or something else, such as a fight between Homura and Mami, and other things like this, that basically go, oh yeah, fan, yeah, drive that fan home. Is it great? No, but as I said, it's my personal favorite because it takes no shit. It has a set story, it goes through the story, and it doesn't care. It's actually really good at that. And when the characters talk, it's not just exposition. Wow. Which is actually rather nice. One of the better scenes, which lays up right before the fight, is simply Homura, Madoka, and Mami having a nice thing of tea. That's it. That's the entire scene, basically, and it's amazing. They're not even talking about story. They're just talking about basically, how are you? This is what I've been doing. Some of this. You're going to go, wait, that doesn't drive the plot forward. Of course it doesn't. But it drives the characters forward. And in the story, there's 2 things that are first. Characters, then plot. If your characters are great, but your plot sucks, at least your characters are great. If your plot is great, but your characters suck, well, it doesn't matter how good that plot is, the characters are unlikable, and we're not going to watch it. It's simple and straightforward. That's why I love the third movie, because it actually kind of shows that the characters have moved on and pushed forward with their lives, even though that's not exactly what they did, but they did a good job of showing it, at least. With other information, such as, well, let's say, oh yeah, there's also really cool animation in it. Okay, fine. and it does continue the plot. However, it does end on the equivalent of a cliffhanger, which pisses a lot of people off. But there was a concept that was released for the fourth movie, and there's no guarantee that there's going to be a new project, like a new movie, but there's supposedly being a new Madoka Magica movie. We don't know too much, but we do know that there was more or less a movie that was shown, and we're pretty sure it's supposed to be a new movie. That concept movie is actually really gorgeous, and from what it looks like, it would be really, really cool. Because if it does continue the same kind of theme that the third movie did, where it was more about the characters than everything else, and the dark undertones was just simply about moving the characters forward, that would be amazing. I would actually totally just sit down and go, okay, it's the fourth movie, boom, watch it. I would buy it probably almost instantly as soon as it came out, and I would sit there and watch it. Do I think it'll be great? No. I never expected the movies to be great. Is it going to be good? Hell yeah. Now that we're done with the anime entirely, we have a lot more. There's a lot more to it. There is Kazumi Magica, which is the Innocent Malice, which is a very, very, very grim manga, but it does a better job than Madoka Magica does of proving its point. Actually, the Madoka Magica manga is worse than the anime. Wait, what? It's an adaptation. It doesn't translate very well. Puella Magi Oriko Magica, I have not read it, but apparently it's okay. Puella Magi Madoka Magica, the different story. This one, I really have no idea what it is. I haven't read it, but I believe it's supposed to be a different timeline, where basically different ideas. While Homura's Revenge, same kind of title, I don't know, actually, at all. But I believe it's supposed to be a interesting book that basically explains certain information about Homura, but it really shouldn't be explained. The extra story, Puella Magi Oriko Magica extra story, is an addition/sequel to Oriko Magica, which explains certain things. Puella Magi Homura Tamura is, I believe, an anime thing completely about Homura, and it basically explains certain information about Homura through the entire set of times that she's looped. Because she's looped, I think, supposedly like 15 or so times. So it's one of those times. Puella Magi Madoka Magica, the movie Rebellion, is a adaptation of the movie. Have not read it. Puella Magi Suzune Magica, I have no clue. I really don't know. Puella Magi Tarte Magica, the legend of Jeanne d'Arc, is self-explanatory. Because, as they show later in the movie, Jeanne d'Arc was a magical girl at some point. So this explains what she did in this continuity. Puella Magi Oriko Magica Sadness Prayer is another sequel to Oriko Magica, and it's fucking terrifying. Puella Magi Madoka Magica Wraith Arc is, I believe, basically the in-between between Rebellion and the original. And yes, that is exactly what it is. It is an interlude between the first, basically the end of the first season, series, and the third movie, because it kind of just leaves off there and then goes into the third movie. So it explains things. There was a light novel written, and I believe it is just basically the exact same thing. It's just Madoka Magica rewritten. Madoka Magica Portable, which is for the PSP, was sadly not released worldwide, because I would like to actually play it. But it's an adventure game, it's an RPG, and it's fairly okay. Another one is Madoka Magica The Battle Pentagram, which is basically a sequel to this, but it's a fighting game, fighting action game, that plays fairly differently. And finally, what I want to touch upon last, even though it's not technically Madoka Magica, I want to touch upon it, Magia Record, which is basically a whole bunch of different things and pushing forward. It is a gacha game that revolves around, you guessed it, Madoka Magica franchise. And it's, well, interesting, because it's different. Now, personally, I don't think it's probably great. It's unavailable in the United States, Canada, and basically everywhere but Japan, which is kind of sad, especially since they have a Nanoha version. But there will be an anime coming out this year. I mean it. It's coming out this year. So, Magia Record coming out. I will likely go talk about it more once it comes out, because that means we'll actually have an idea of what's about. With other things, I have no clue. But apparently it's pretty similar to Fate Go in the idea of structure. The only difference is I prefer Fate Go because it's silly, it's lighthearted sometimes, and it just doesn't know when to stop giving the chuckles. Like, literally, the main characters are hilarious a good majority of the time. And even the options you're given to choose, even though they don't affect the story in any way, are sometimes obnoxiously silly, and I love it. Because they take a note from Fate Stay Night. When Fate Stay Night is funny, it is blatantly funny. It decides, screw this shit, all gloves come off, time to get funnily serious. And it's amazing. Some of the punchlines in Fate Stay Night, especially in Unlimited Blade Works, just go whee throughout the window. While with other information, not so much. But Fate has a kind of idea of that. Magia, sadly, because of the innate negativity that is proven within this franchise, I am sure that Magia Record, even though it has nothing to do with Madoka Magica really at all, it will probably be nowhere near as successful. Not because it's an adaptation, simply because it's not the same, and people want more of the same. People don't want to change. But when they change, whatever makes them change becomes very popular very fast, and they don't want to have that tarnished. Which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm tarnishing Madoka Magica. So, that should be enough about Magia Record and Madoka Magica for today. It's been an interesting conversation. It was just something that I really wanted to talk about because of how negative I sometimes feel towards Madoka Magica. It's just something seething with it. Hopefully, in the future, whenever the fourth movie comes out, maybe I'll change my mind again. But I would not recommend Madoka Magica to anyone unless you very much like the specific type of genre it's a part of. And that's it. I would never show this upon you unless you really wanted to watch it. Thank you. And I'll see you here next week for a glorious, glorious account of the magical girl genre. See you here next time. Bye.